Hello, my name is Frank Christensen and I'm the coordinator of officials for IFAF in Europe. This is the last of 6 training tapes dealing with false starts. Today we're specifically looking at wide receivers and what it looks like when they false start. We'll look at how much is too much and what is not enough for a false start. And we'll talk about mechanics and in how to catch these and the philosophy of when to call it and who should call it. But before we get to the game film, let's have a look at the rulebook and the MOFO to see what they have to say on this topic.
In the rulebook, we go to Rule 712 dealing with false start. Each of the following is a false start by Team A if it occurs prior to the snap, after the ball is ready for play and all players are in scrimmage formation. 1. Any movement by one or more players that simulates the start of a play. 2. The snapper moving to another position. And 3. A restricted lineman according to Rule 227.4, moving his hand or making any quick movement. As for the exceptions, 1. A. It is not a false start if a Team A lineman immediately reacts when threatened by a Team B player in the neutral zone. B. It is not a false start if the snapper takes his hand off the ball, provided this does not simulate the start of a play. And then 4. It is also a false start when an offensive player makes a quick, jerky movement before the snap, included but not limited to A. A lineman moving his foot, shoulder, arm, body, or neck in a quick, jerky motion in any direction. B. The snapper shifting or moving the ball, moving his thumb or fingers, flexing his elbows, jerking his head, or dipping his shoulders or buttocks. C. The quarterback making any quick, jerky movement that simulates the beginning of a play. And D. A back simulating receiving the ball by making any quick, jerky movement that simulates the beginning of the play. And finally, 5. The offensive team never coming to a 1-second stop prior to the snap after the ball is ready for play. This is an illegal shift that converts to a false start. In the MOFO, we go to section 3.2 definitions. Examples of conspicuous fouls that should be called, even though they might otherwise be disregarded as not serious, include F. False start by a back, tight end, or receiver. In section 3.3 non-contact fouls, false start says, movement by an offensive player is not a false start unless either 1. He moves one or both feet, 2. It is sudden, or 3. It causes a defensive player to move in reaction. If a running back misses the snap count, makes a sudden movement, and then stops abruptly, it is a false start. If he was generally going into motion, he wouldn't stop. And finally, if in doubt as to whether movement was prior to the snap or not, it was not. Don't be picky on this. Now, let's have a look at some game film. In this first example, we're looking at both of the receivers closest to the camera. So both the split end and the slot back are going to miss the snap count, and they're going to do this flinch that simulates the start of the play, even though the ball hasn't been snapped. So there's no way that we can say this is the start of a motion or anything like this. So this is something that the wing on this side of the field needs to call and correctly calls in this case. Here's a similar example of the receiver closest to the camera just misses the snap count, and it's very difficult to say that this is start of a motion the way he moves down the field. So correctly called by this wing, and you know, even if there's subsequent movement in the box and the umpire has a flag on on somebody in the middle, and there's a doubt who moved first in the middle. As soon as we have a receiver, 99% of the time it will be the receiver who moved first, and we're just going to go with the false start on the receiver because everybody can see the receiver moving first, and that's what we're going to go with. In this example, we're looking at the slot back closest to the camera, and he could go in motion if he wanted to, but right there, that flinch is not a motion type movement. This is simulating the start of the snap, or flinching because he thought the ball was going to be snapped. So this is a false start, and we missed this maybe because the wing on this side gets focused in on the defenders moving, or maybe he's just trying to look at too much of the line of scrimmage at once. So my advice would be to keep most of your focus on your side of the ball, at least, so that we don't miss this type of a flinch. In this example, we're looking at A5, the slot back here, and again, he could go in motion. This could be the start of a motion, but it is not, and it is the responsibility of the receiver that a motion, the beginning of a motion, does not look like the start of the play. And I think here it's fairly obvious that he just missed the snap count, and this needs to be called, and was correctly called as a false start on A5. In this last example, we're again looking at the receivers closest to the camera, and they just missed the snap count. I mean, moving forward like that is not beginning of a motion, even though we have to, when it's receivers, we have to give them at least some benefit of the doubt when they start moving, in terms of, could this be start of a motion, or is this a false start? Here it's clearly a false start. And also, even though the defense is also in the neutral zone, they're also jumping offside, but by the time they do that, and even the guy in the middle close to the snapper, even by the time he makes contact, either physically or by philosophy, when he does that, the play's over because the receivers have already false started. So we could have a conversation in there between the potentially the referee, the umpire, talking about, well, who moved first, the offense or the defense in the box, and then the linesman here at the bottom can come in and say, well, I'm going to overrule everybody because I had a couple of receivers moving, so that's going to take precedence over anything that happened in the middle. And that was this training tape. I hope it made sense, and I hope you found something you can use on the field.